Silent Hill is a series of survival horror video games published by the Japanese company Konami. The series primarily takes place in the eponymous fictional American town, which is characterized by its foggy, deserted streets, grotesque monsters, and omnipresent sense of dread. The first game in the Silent Hill series was released in 1999 and introduces the player to the eerie, foggy town of Silent Hill. Harry Mason and his daughter Cheryl are driving to Silent Hill for a vacation. On the outskirts of town, a figure suddenly appears in the road, causing Harry to swerve and crash the car. When he wakes up, Cheryl is gone. Harry sets out to find her, but Silent Hill is not a normal town. It's covered in a thick fog, snow seems to be falling out of season, and there are no people to be found, only monstrous creatures. Harry discovers that the town occasionally shifts to a darker, nightmare version of itself, where the fog and snow are replaced by rust and blood, and the monsters become even more horrifying. As Harry delves deeper into the town, he uncovers clues that point him to a local cult called the Order. This cult believes in an old religion that predates Christianity, focused on the worship of a deity they simply call God. They believe in rebirth through pain and suffering and have performed horrific acts in the past to bring about the rebirth of their God. Harry learns that Cheryl's disappearance is connected to this cult. They believe Cheryl is the reincarnation of a girl named Alessa Gillespie, the daughter of Dahlia Gillespie, a key member of the Order. Alessa was used in a ritual 7 years prior to bring about the birth of their god. However, the ritual was interrupted, splitting Alessa's soul into two. One half remained with Alessa, who has been kept alive and suffering in a hidden hospital room since then, and the other half was reincarnated as Cheryl. The town's transformations are revealed to be a manifestation of Alessa's nightmare world, brought about by her immense psychic powers, which were amplified by the botched ritual. Dahlia has been using a special artifact, the Floros, to control Alessa's power and draw the two halves of the soul back together. In the climax of the game, Harry confronts Dahlia, Alessa, and the now merged Cheryl in the town's lighthouse. Depending on the player's actions throughout the game, several endings can occur, but in all of them, Harry defeats a monstrous form of the cult's deity, which has been summoned by the rejoining of Alessa's soul. Alessa's spirit then appears and gives Harry a newborn baby, which is implied to be a reincarnation of both Alessa and Cheryl. After this, Harry escapes from Silent Hill while the town transforms back to its normal state. The fate of Dahlia and the other members of the Order varies depending on the ending. Silent Hill 2, released in 2001, is considered by many to be the high point of the series. Unlike the first game, it does not directly involve the cult central to Silent Hill's darker aspects, but instead focuses on psychological themes and personal guilt. James Sunderland arrives in Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his wife, Mary, who has been dead for 3 years from a debilitating disease. The letter states that she is waiting for him in their special place in Silent Hill. A seemingly impossible proposition that nonetheless drives James to return to the eerie town. As he explores Silent Hill, James encounters various monsters, all of which represent different aspects of his subconscious and his feelings of guilt and sexual frustration related to Mary's illness and death. He also meets several other characters, each of whom is dealing with their own guilt and personal demons. These characters include Angela, a troubled young woman who fled an abusive home; Eddie, a man who was bullied and ridiculed to the point that he developed violent tendencies; and Laura, a young girl who apparently sees none of the monsters and believes James to be lying about Mary's death. Finally, James encounters Maria, a woman who looks almost exactly like Mary but whose personality is more flirtatious and sultry. James's journey leads him to various locations within Silent Hill, including a hospital, a historical society, a prison, and a hotel, the latter of which is James and Mary's special place. Throughout his journey, he discovers more about the nature of Silent Hill and how it brings out the darkness within people's hearts, confronting them with their deepest fears and guilt. In the Lakeview Hotel, James finds a videotape that reveals the truth. In a fit of despair and frustration, he smothered Mary to death. The realization that he killed his wife is too much for James to bear, and he's confronted by two final manifestations of his guilt: a monstrous version of Maria, representing his guilt over his sexual frustration during Mary's illness, and a doppelganger of himself, representing his guilt over Mary's death. The game has multiple endings, determined by how the player has interacted with the game world and its characters. Some of these endings show James committing suicide or being killed. Others show him escaping Silent Hill with Laura, suggesting that he has come to terms with his guilt and is ready to move on. Regardless of the ending, Silent Hill 2 is a deep dive into the psyche of a man haunted by guilt and regret, and it uses the town of Silent Hill as a manifestation of those feelings. Its story is often cited as one of the most effective uses of psychological horror in video games. Silent Hill 3, released in 2003, is a direct sequel to the original Silent Hill. It continues the story of Harry Mason and introduces a new protagonist, Heather. 17 years after the events of the first game, Heather Mason, the adopted daughter of Harry Mason, has a nightmare while in the mall, where she is chased by monstrous creatures in a hellish alternate version of the mall. When she wakes up, she begins to make her way home, but her journey is not simple. On her way, Heather encounters a detective named Douglas Cartland, who has been hired to find her by a cult operating in Silent Hill, the same cult from the first game. She also encounters Claudia Wolf, a member of the cult who seems to have a sinister interest in her. Heather manages to evade both of them and returns home, only to find her father, Harry, has been murdered, presumably by the cult. Devastated and furious, Heather decides to go to Silent Hill to confront Claudia and avenge her father's death. Douglas, feeling guilty for his part in Harry's death, decides to help her. As Heather explores Silent Hill, she encounters a variety of grotesque creatures and experiences disturbing hallucinations, all of which are related to the cult and its deity. Through various notes and flashbacks, it is revealed that Heather is actually the reincarnation of both Cheryl Mason and Alessa Gillespie from the first game. After Harry defeated the cult's deity in the first game, Alessa's soul was reborn as a baby, which Harry found and raised as Heather. Claudia wants to use Heather to birth the cult's deity, believing that this will lead to the salvation of mankind. Heather eventually confronts Claudia in the cult's church, where Claudia tries to force her to birth their god. However, Heather takes a mystical item known as the Aglaophotis, a substance that Harry had left for her, which causes her to vomit up the deity's fetus instead. Claudia, desperate, swallows the fetus herself and births the deity, which Heather is then forced to fight. After defeating the deity, Heather returns to the normal world, where she finds Douglas injured but alive. Depending on the player's actions during the game, Heather either leaves Silent Hill with Douglas, possibly to continue her father's fight against the cult, or discovers Douglas dead and leaves on her own. Just like previous games, Silent Hill 3 is full of symbolism and metaphors that are open to interpretation. Its story is a combination of a personal journey of self-discovery and the continuation of the overarching plot of the Silent Hill series. Silent Hill 4. The Room, released in 2004, represents a departure from the series' usual format, although it maintains the psychological horror themes. The protagonist is Henry Townsend, and the gameplay is split between his locked apartment in South Ashfield, a fictional city near Silent Hill, and various otherworldly locations he accesses through a mysterious hole that appears in his bathroom. Henry has been trapped in his apartment, room 302, for 5 days, with the exit door sealed by chains and no way to contact the outside world. Suddenly, a hole appears in his bathroom, leading to a series of strange and disturbing alternate dimensions. These locations are seemingly unconnected, but are all places that a serial killer named Walter Sullivan, who is deeply connected to the history of Silent Hill in room 302, has visited or has a connection to. As Henry travels through these places, he encounters several people who, like him, have become trapped in these dimensions. All of them, it turns out, are being hunted by Walter Sullivan as part of a ritual he's performing called the 21 Sacraments, in which he intends to purify the world by killing 21 specific individuals. These people all have some sort of connection to Walter, or to room 302, which Walter believes to be his mother. Henry discovers that Walter was an orphan raised by the cult of Silent Hill, the Order, and was led to believe that room 302, where he was abandoned as a baby, was his mother. Walter was subject to the Order's horrific teachings and rituals, which drove him to insanity and led him to start his killing spree. His ultimate goal is to resurrect his mother, room 302, by completing the 21 Sacraments. Throughout the game, Henry is aided by Eileen Galvin, a neighbor from the apartment next door, who becomes involved in the nightmare when she becomes one of Walter's targets. Depending on the player's actions, Henry and Eileen can either defeat Walter and escape the nightmare or fail, leading to their deaths and the successful completion of the 21 Sacraments. In all endings, Silent Hill 4, The Room offers a deep exploration of themes like obsession, the impact of trauma, and the danger of fanatical belief. Its use of a constrained environment, Henry's apartment, also marks it as unique within the Silent Hill series. Silent Hill Origins, released in 2007, serves as a prequel to the first game. It tells the story of Travis Grady, a trucker with a troubled past who becomes trapped in Silent Hill. While driving near Silent Hill, Travis encounters a figure in the road which turns out to be a young girl, Alessa Gillespie. He follows her to a burning house where he rescues her from the flames, but loses consciousness. When he wakes up, he's in Silent Hill and starts to look for Alessa. Like other Silent Hill games, the town is blanketed in fog and filled with grotesque monsters. Travis is also capable of shifting between the foggy real world and a dark and decrepit otherworld by looking into mirrors. As he explores, he uncovers repressed memories of his own troubled childhood, including the death of his parents. Meanwhile, he discovers more about Alessa's past and her connection to a local cult. He learns that Dahlia Gillespie, Alessa's mother, attempted to use Alessa to birth the cult's god, but the ritual was interrupted by a fire, the same fire from the start of the game, which left Alessa severely burned and in a state of unconsciousness. The fire and Alessa's condition also caused the birth of the otherworld, a reflection of Alessa's nightmares and suffering. In his journey, Travis encounters various characters from the first game, including a younger doctor, Michael Kaufman, director of Alchemilla Hospital, and Lisa Garland, a nurse at the hospital who is addicted to a drug supplied by Kaufman. Travis also meets Dahlia, who is portrayed in a more sympathetic light compared to the first game. Towards the end of the game, Travis is forced to confront the cult's god, manifested as a monstrous version of Alessa. After defeating the god, Alessa appears to Travis and thanks him for his help. The game ends with Alessa splitting her soul into two, setting the stage for the events of the first game. Travis leaves Silent Hill, his fate left unknown. Silent Hill Origins adds further depth to the backstory of the first game, revealing more about Alessa's past and the cult's activities, while also exploring Travis's own personal demons. Silent Hill Homecoming, released in 2008, is the sixth installment in the Silent Hill series. The game follows Alex Shepard, a soldier returning home from an overseas war to find his hometown of Shepherd's Glen in disarray and his younger brother Joshua missing. Upon arrival at Shepherd's Glen, Alex notices the town is covered in a mysterious fog, and most of its population has disappeared. His search for Joshua and the truth behind the town's condition inevitably leads him to the neighboring town of Silent Hill. In Silent Hill, Alex encounters various nightmarish creatures and shifts between the normal world and the other world, a dark, decayed version of reality. He also meets several characters, including Elle Holloway, a childhood friend who is searching for her missing sister, and Deputy Wheeler, a police officer who assists Alex in his search for Joshua. As Alex delves deeper into the mystery, he discovers that Shepherd's Glen was founded by 4 families who fled from Silent Hill's resident cult, the Order, but continued to worship the same god. To appease their god and ensure the prosperity of Shepherd's Glen, the founding families agreed to a pact, which required each family to periodically perform a human sacrifice from within their own ranks. It's revealed that Alex was chosen by his parents to be their sacrifice. However, his father couldn't go through with it and instead sent Alex away to join the military, which led to the pact being broken and the subsequent decay of Shepherd's Glen. The story becomes more complicated when Alex learns that he never actually served in the military. Instead, he was institutionalized after accidentally causing Joshua's death in a boating accident. The memories of being a soldier were a delusion he created to cope with his guilt. In the climax of the game, Alex confronts the Order and learns that his mother has been sacrificed by his father, who believed it could fix the pact. Depending on the player's actions throughout the game, Alex can either defeat the Order and escape Silent Hill with Elle or Wheeler, die at the hands of a monstrous version of his guilt, or be institutionalized once again, leaving the fate of Shepherd's Glen uncertain. Silent Hill Homecoming explores themes of guilt, sacrifice, and the lengths to which people will go to protect their loved ones, while continuing to delve into the dark mythology of Silent Hill and its cult. Silent Hill Shattered Memories, released in 2009, is a unique entry in the series, as it is a reimagining of the original Silent Hill game. It takes place in a different continuity and offers a fresh take on the series' familiar characters and settings. The The game's story is told through two parallel narratives, a therapy session with a psychologist, and the experiences of Harry Mason in Silent Hill. In the therapy narrative, a man named Dr. Michael Kaufman is holding a therapy session with a woman named Cheryl. The player's responses to Kaufman's psychological tests during these sections actually affect the details of Harry's story, including the appearances of characters and the environments within Silent Hill. In the main narrative, Harry Mason wakes up after a car accident to find that his daughter, Cheryl, is missing. He decides to search for her in the town of Silent Hill, which is suffering from a harsh winter storm. As Harry, the player, explores various locations in Silent Hill while periodically experiencing shifts into a nightmarish, frozen version of the town known as the Ice World. Unlike other Silent Hill games, there's no combat and shattered memories. Instead, when the town shifts into the Ice World, Harry must run and hide from strange humanoid creatures. The player can also use Harry's cell phone to make calls, take pictures, and access a GPS map. Throughout his search, Harry encounters several characters from the original game in different roles, including Sybil Bennett as a sympathetic police officer and Dahlia Gillespie as a troubled woman with whom Harry apparently has a romantic relationship. In the climax of the game, it's revealed that Harry Mason actually died in a car crash many years ago, and that the Harry we've been playing as is a construct of Cheryl's imagination, a fantasy figure she's been holding on to in order to avoid dealing with her father's death. The therapy sessions are revealed to be Cheryl's, not Harry's, and they've been aimed at helping her let go of her fantasy of Harry and accept the truth. Depending on the player's choices throughout the game, Cheryl can either come to terms with Harry's death and move on, continue clinging to her fantasy, or fall into despair. Silent Hill, Shattered Memories deals with themes of grief, denial, and the power of memory. It stands out in the series due to its gameplay mechanics and its more psychological and emotional approach to horror. A Silent Hill, Downpour, released in 2012, is the 8th installment in the Silent Hill series. The game features Murphy Pendleton, a prison inmate who ends up in Silent Hill after his prison transport bus crashes. The game begins with Murphy, under ambiguous circumstances, killing a man named Patrick Napier in the prison showers. Shortly after this, Murphy is transferred to another facility, but the transport bus crashes just outside Silent Hill. Surviving the crash, Murphy decides to flee but finds himself drawn into the town. As Murphy explores Silent Hill, he encounters monstrous creatures and experiences shifts into a nightmarish version of the town known as the Other World, all typical elements of the Silent Hill series. He also encounters several characters, including Anne Cunningham, a corrections officer who survived the bus crash and holds a deep grudge against Murphy for unknown reasons, and DJ Bobby Ricks, a radio host who appears to know more about the town's mysteries than he initially lets on. As he progresses through the town, Murphy's backstory is gradually revealed through flashbacks. It turns out that Napier was the man who raped and killed Murphy's young son, Charlie. In exchange for agreeing to work for a corrupt prison guard, George Sewell, Murphy was given the opportunity to take revenge on Napier. However, after Murphy killed Napier, Sewell betrayed him and hinted that he would be forced to kill someone else. Throughout the game, Murphy is haunted by a creature known as the Bogeyman, a manifestation of his guilt over Charlie's death and his revenge on Napier. Depending on the player's choices throughout the game, the identity of the person Sewell forced Murphy to kill changes. It could be another prisoner, a criminal, or even an innocent man. This affects the game's ending, as does Murphy's behavior towards other characters throughout the game. In the climactic confrontation, it's revealed that Anne is the daughter of the man Murphy was forced to kill. Depending on the player's choices and the ending achieved, Murphy may either absolve himself of his guilt and escape Silent Hill with Anne, be forced to confront a monstrous version of himself, or be doomed to remain in the town forever, among other outcomes. Silent Hill. Downpour explores themes of guilt, revenge, and redemption. Its use of player choices to influence the narrative and ending was a first for the series. That brings us to the end of our deep dive into the eerie and complex narratives of the Silent Hill series. We hope this journey into the fog-shrouded town was both enlightening and entertaining. Whether you're a longtime fan or just getting introduced, Silent Hill's twisted tale continues to captivate us all. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please remember to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more gaming lore, walkthroughs, and analysis.